Hey, look what we have found. A big sound in a small town. Far away from the bright lights. They're making music every night. Discover what is all around. A big sound. A big sound. In a small town. Big sound, small town. A really big sound. Big sound, small town.
You're listening to Big Sound, Small Town with Sandy Carlton.
Today, my guest on Big Sound, Small Town is one of the most interesting people I've ever interviewed. Tell them who you are.
I don't know who you're talking about, but while I'm sitting here, my name is Daniel Coston. I'm a photographer, writer, historian, archivist, go-between, and now a record producer as well. And as we're talking, we're speaking at the Earl Scruggs Center here in Shelby, North Carolina, which is where I've exhibited a couple of times, including with my Avett Brothers photo earlier this year. I always tell people I just never knew where to stop. I enjoy doing a lot of different things, and I've always been of the opinion that if you can do it and if you want to do it, you should go do it. And I haven't stopped.
And that is the reason I call this man one of the most interesting people I've ever interviewed. Because he is a guy not only with a lot of really just fine stories, but they're so varied. And he is, I'll have to do it or push him to do it on this podcast because he's not a name dropper, but you can drop a music name and, oh yeah, I shot them. And this is the way it goes. I shot them back in 74 because he remembers stuff like that. You know?
I've been very lucky to work with a lot of good people through the years. And I've enjoyed this again this year as my event photography in Charlotte and elsewhere has come back. People say, oh, do you do anything besides photographing events? And I say, yes, I photograph bands. Oh, have you done that for a while? Oh, 27 years. Have you worked with anybody famous? Oh, Johnny Cash, the Avett Brothers, Merle Haggard, Beach Boys, Monkees. And it's like slowly watching their jaw drop to the floor. It's and then I just smile and nod, and it's just nice to watch from time to time.
And it is, when we're talking about your rock and roll photography, it is actually a history of who has passed through both North Carolina and in particularly Charlotte during those times.
It's been amazing. I think about, I started photographing shows in Charlotte in '96. Recently, Jerry Lee Lewis passed away. I photographed him standing on a 6-inch high stage in the middle of Tryon Street, '97. James Burton standing alongside of him. And these amazing people came through Charlotte or somewhere near Charlotte.
Right.
And I wanted to go experience everything. And for the most part, I did. And thankfully, the camera allowed me to get into these places and take pictures and oftentimes meet the musicians and then work with the musicians.
Yeah. Well, and which is the case, which is something else we're going to talk about today. You have your hands in a lot of pies, and one of them is producing people. And I guess did that connection come through a photograph or a photography session?
I think it was coming through working with a lot of different bands that needed a point person. They needed someone to say, oh, you should do this. Okay, I'll see you through this. As a photographer, I was advising a lot of bands as well, whether I was working doing tour photos or just, hey, what do you think of this?
Right.
And then I slowly realized, well, why can't I do that?
Right.
And so the first band I really started working with was The Circle.
Right.
Circle, two big hits in 1966, Red Rubber Ball, Turn Down Day, managed by Brian Epstein, the Beatles in 1966. And I met them in a show in Ohio, and just originally I was going to pitch it, let's do a book. And then I was like, wait, I really want to hear them do a new record. And that's how I pitched it to them. It was like, what if you got to make the record you didn't get to make in 1968? Right. And we got 6 songs done in Ohio 4 days before the world went crazy with COVID. I think last time we talked was either I was about to do that session or just done that session.
Yeah, we're about to do it.
Yes, and so we then spent several months getting those songs mixed and then released through Universal. And then last year I said, okay, let's start to put the rest of this record together. So ultimately, it was a 3-year process.
Yeah, and
Put this record together.
Because I remember you started it, and I was thinking, I was wondering to myself, what's the progress with that? It started, and then things got weird in the world.
It did, and then we had spent a lot of time. With the first recordings we did were new recordings for their hits,
Right.
And we spent a lot of time getting those songs right. And we were all doing this remotely. Me in North Carolina,
Right.
Don Daneman, the singer in Delaware, the producer in Ohio, or the studio engineer and producer in Ohio. And so it took a while.
I'm
and
sure.
then we had to get everybody else comfortable getting back in the studio, even if it was just person to person.
Right.
So, and songs kept coming in. Don wrote some new songs along the way. I reached out to my friend Andrew Sandoval, who's the Monkees manager.
Right.
I'd worked on the Monkees, so I knew Andrew pretty well, and found the song that he had done with the late Circle's bassist and harmony vocalist Tom Dawes. I knew they had found a song. I found it one night while looking for another CD completely unrelated to it, which often happens with me. And I brought the song to Don. I didn't tell him who was on the song. I just said, Don, listen to this. Tell me what you think. Because I knew the moment that he realized it was Tom singing all the harmony parts, his perception of the song would change.
Change, yeah.
So I wanted him to hear the song first,
Right.
then give him the information. And then what happened for that was he not only covered Andrew's song, He Can Fly, he created a whole new song out of Tom's harmony parts, and that song's called We Thought We Could Fly.
That's pretty cool.
Thank you.
That's really cool.
And actually, I refer to this out. The album, by the way, is called Center of the World, and He Can Fly essentially for me is the end of side one. We Thought We Could Fly, which is essentially brings the story of the Circle
Right.
through the album, is the end of side two.
It
Really does bookend
that's really
the
cool.
album. And we got Charlie Colello, who produced the band's last recordings in 1967, to mix a song for this album.
Oh, that is.
So all that takes time.
How many original members?
There are two.
Two.
There are two, and then the late Tom Dawes is on
Right.
2 songs.
Right.
So I had the chance to meet the original drummer a few years ago, Marty Freed, but his schedules and mine didn't line up, and sadly he passed away soon after. I am in touch with their original keyboardist, the other original keyboardist. So the band now is the original singer and guitarist, Don Daneman,
Right.
and Michael Oskamp, who joined the band after the Beatles tour.
Right.
So he's on Neon, which is probably my favorite Circle album, and then the soundtrack for a movie they did called The Minx.
Okay.
And that was, the band, that was the era of the band that I always felt like didn't get enough attention. Because they're
Right.
really good songs, they just weren't on the radio at that point. So it's been fun, and they're all really good guys. They're just, they all sound great. It's like sometimes you work with a group of musicians and you just realize they're not going to be open to collaboration or saying, try this, try that. Right. And with this group, I could.
Had they, as individual musicians, had they continued to play music over the years, or did that become a sideline?
Don became a commercial producer and jingle writer, as did Tom Dawes.
Okay.
They both work separately in New York. And we're actually talking about reuniting as a band, either Circle or something else, when Tom passed away in 2007, which was one of the reasons why Don was so thrilled that I could bring this song to him, because his dream had actually been, well, I wish I could have done one more song with Tom.
Yeah.
Now he did.
Now
he has. Yeah. And then Mike Loskamp, he never stopped. He actually was in a band called Greenlight Sunday, which had an album released by RCA in the 70s.
I remember that.
Yeah, he was in Greenlight Sunday.
Wow.
And he then started playing with bands in Ohio. So he has never stopped.
Well, that's one of those things that you wonder, because bands, the 60s is a long time ago, and you wonder, some of those people just disappear.
Some do, and some you're able to find in the woodwork.
Continue to work, which is really cool.
Sometimes they change names. I found that. One of my other records I've worked on this year is a record by the Left Bank.
Yeah.
Some unreleased recordings they made in the 70s and 2000s. Some of those band members changed their names. So trying to track them down 50 years later.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yes.
Let's talk about that one too, since you just brought it up. Let's talk about the Left Bank.
The Left Bank, I always tell people, and the Circle did this too, but the Left Bank goes back even further for me, even more so. Some bands just get in your soul. Some bands just get hold of you and they won't let you go, and the Left Bank is one of those bands for me.
Well, also, while we back it up, because I'm not sure how many of my listeners were even alive in anywhere near that time. But both of these acts actually have two of their songs were just monster hits, not just you know, not just a one on the chart. You know, they were monster hits, and well, everyone knows they're two hits, or just about anyone who has a music knowledge and working, you know, a working repertoire how music goes knows River of Ball and Walk Away Renee. You know,
I mean, it's amazing to think that the Circle was they were in college. I think they just finished college when they recorded Red River Ball. The Left Bank was 17 and 15 when they did Walk Away Renee, and it was their third attempt at recording. They'd already pretty much broken up twice. They got the single out for pretty much a very small amount on Smash Records, which was a division of Mercury. 3 months later, it's top 5.
Yeah, I mean,
and then the story really started with the Left Bank. And I worked with a latter version of the band with 2 original members, and then met a third. I met Michael Brown, the man who wrote Walk Away Renee and Pretty Ballerina, their second hit, at the band's final show in New York in 2013. And through that, I developed a relationship with their families. Sadly, all the members are now passed away. And in 2020, Omnivore Recordings, who I had been friends with their label co-owner Cheryl Pavelski for about 20 years. We met in a line to see a show at South by Southwest.
Oh, that's cool.
20 years ago, and within 5 minutes, we're talking about the Left Bank. And then 2020, she called me and said, "How do you think about producing a Left Bank CD?" I said, "I'd love to," because I very quietly had collected all their unreleased recordings.
Right.
The album they made in the 70s that never got a proper release, a bunch of amazing recordings that the majority of the band did in 2001, 2002. Originally, this was going to be a 2 CD collection, sort of an odds and sods.
Right.
We paired it back to the 70s album, which is called Strangers on a Train, and these 0102 recordings, just because it was easier to license. And even with the 70s album, it took 8 months just to license it. It took 8 months just to get BMG to acknowledge they actually owned the record.
That was one of the things that I was going to bring up is I'm sure this is much more difficult than it seems, because I know at some point, and I don't know how deep, someone owned this, some record company, I'm sure, owned this material.
Yeah, the BMG now owns, it's passed through about 4 different hands, and they've still not found the masters. So I had backup copies that Tom Finn had given me, so we worked from that and another source for the Strangers album. The 0102 recordings are from my collection.
Oh.
And they came from a collector in England who had gotten them from Michael Brown. And now I've since become friends with Michael Brown's family, so I got the copies that they had. But yeah, the original source is from my collection.
Will they so the other stuff, how difficult was it to get a record company to release that?
Well, Omnivore is a record label, but it took forever to license, and then it took a good while to get all the estates to sign off.
I'm sure.
They all said initially yes, verbally, but actually get the paperwork. It was right up until the album was released.
A release of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I was dealing with that while we opened the Avett Brothers show, while all these things were going on. So I'll tell you that the day that the Left Bank album was released, I literally went to the website and realized it's for real. This album is for sale now. It's a real living boy, and it was a very joyous moment.
Publishing companies, did you have to mess with them too? Were there someone who
publishing for the BMG album, the Strangers album? That had been basically BMG had bought at Lock, Stock, and Barrel, even if they didn't know it.
Yeah.
The 2001, 2002 recordings was all done by Michael Brown. So I think he had published all the songs except one, and we since got that published.
Okay, well then that's cool.
And I'll tell you one amazing thing that came out of that project was, so we're about to finish this record. We had it basically locked in, and I had an email one night from Yvonne Vitale, Michael Brown's widow, and said, "We found some backup files. We found some backup CDs because they had done the sessions in the early 2000s. They'd done them on Pro Tools." And she said, "Can we send these to you?" I'm like, "Oh my God, yes."
Yeah, sure, of course.
And I received 53 folders on a Google Drive. 2 folders had 9 songs that I didn't know existed.
Wow.
So we went from thinking, okay, there's 9 to 11 songs with the original singer, Steve Marcaro, on them. Then we discovered there's actually 17. And that was, I mean, that I had this conversation with Seth Avett recently, pardon me for dropping his name. And I said, have you ever, and I knew he just released an album with Greg Brown.
Greg Brown stuff, yeah, it's great.
And I said, imagine you woke up at your computer one day and turned it on and discovered a whole entire album from Greg Brown. That's what happened with me, with the Left Bank. And so that for me alone, that moment said, okay, whatever I've gone through the last 2 years putting this record together, it just made it worth it. And there's still more out there I'm still searching for.
Well, now, so what have you done with that? Are you saving that for another project, right?
I would like to release that down the road. I
Yeah.
pitched it to Omnivore, see how they feel about that. I think we need to handle some of the paperwork differently, but it can be done.
Right.
I really would love people to hear that record.
Yeah.
I still think there's more out there. I know Tom Finn, who was the band's bassist, vocalist, main writer of the Strangers on a Train album, he had digitized a lot of his material, but he didn't save it, or he didn't share it with anyone.
Oh.
I think it may still exist somewhere in his collection.
Yeah.
I just have not found it or gotten my hands on it yet, but I think there's more. And I think you should always be searching. I think you should always be searching for more. I mean, the idea, I know everything and I found everything. No, there's always more to know. There's always more to find. And I still think there's some circle material out there that I and the band don't know about.
Yeah,
But
some other one of the other individuals in the band did some stuff, but you're you know, sure.
I'll tell you, I spent a lot of time in 2020, the last 2 years doing random searches on Facebook because stuff turns up that way.
Yeah, it
Says,
does.
oh yeah, I recorded the Circle and the Critters in 1960. You did? You know, I'm still waiting for them to send me a
Right.
copy of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Because I do think musicians are bad to do stuff in their home studios, do the stuff, you know, even in my case, even one of the guys that I play music with, he and I do side projects and record them. And a lot of times I've even forgot that we've done those, you know. Just a Christmas song surfaced this week that I'd
Oh wow.
totally
Yeah.
forgotten.
I mean, I'm good about remembering certain things. Thank you for saying that. But every once in a while, I was like, oh yeah, I did photograph that
Yeah.
band. Oh yeah, I did work with that person. It's just when you're living day to day, and as I mentioned before, I'm an event photographer as well, and obviously much of my world in that respect was just gone for 18 months. And in February this year, everybody, as the numbers started to go down, everybody just said, we're doing events until they tell us to stop, and it's not stopped.
Yeah.
So when you're working 2 to 4 events a day and producing, I think I've produced 5 records this year.
Wow.
And, you know, the Avett Brothers exhibit, other projects, other things I'm working on, it gets to be a bit of, it's easy to forget. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I even sent you a picture and asked you if you made the picture. It was a picture of me playing at the Double Door. And I had no idea where that picture came from.
Don't know if I did, but it's possible. I mean, I would go to the Double Door so many random nights and just shoot. And I always would try, back then I would print it and share it with people.
Right. And I don't know how I got that picture.
Yeah.
I had no idea who made it. I didn't, and I found it there again looking for something else that I'd forgotten about, because that would have been 20 years ago or so. And it was like I was going through it and I thought, well, and that was not long after I had you up here. And I was thinking, well, I wonder if Daniel made this picture or not.
Well, and the funny thing is, you were mentioning the show, and I think I was at the show. I couldn't remember if I got there to see your set, but I recently have been processing about 80, 90 rolls of film that I did not process back in the day. I just never got around. Some amazing stuff. A whole roll of John Prine from Merlefest turned up.
Really?
Pictures of Scott Avett doing an art discussion at the Mint Museum in 2006. Things like that. I remembered it. I just didn't know where the pictures were. Well, found it.
Found it. Yeah. That's, I guess digital has made that easier for you than the old.
Sometimes, but then it's like trying to keep like, okay, when was I here? And like, it's just different storage. It is nice to be able to go back to prints, other more physical things. And one of the things that I also worked on this year was photos for the Wilco box set for Yankee Hotel Foxtrot. And that was actually through Cheryl Plawelski, who, even though I had worked with the band in 2002, they bought a number of my photos for their best of about 8-9 years ago. Cheryl emailed me one day and said, didn't you work with Wilco? I was like, yeah. Like in 2002? I was like, yes. And she said, we're doing the box set. What do you have? And I was like, well, what do you want? And I figured they were going to buy more photos from the photo shoot that we did in Philadelphia in October of that year. And I said, oh, by the way, I actually went and shot them in Nashville that same summer. And then I took a couple rolls of live shots at the Philadelphia show, including a roll on slides that I thankfully had printed back then. And I started to scan the slides. I actually like the prints a little better, just because they had kept the colors a little more and had a certain look I liked. I just figured, well, I'll send them everything, but I'm sure they're going to buy all the post shots. They bought all the live shots.
Really?
Yeah. So it was actually good, and I actually found a number of those pictures in 2020. One of the things that I spent so much time at home, I was like, you have to get your archives together.
I'm sure your archives are massive.
It gets a little overwhelming at times. I'm really good now at saying, okay, this is here, this is that. I can find everything pretty quickly.
I guess you spent some of that downtime organizing that stuff.
It took me about a year.
Yeah.
I'd work on it really intently for a long time, and then I kind of had to walk away from it. Sometimes when you're looking back over your life and your projects, sometimes it's not say bad memories, but it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people I work with, a lot of people I'm friends with that are no longer here.
Right. Yeah,
it's physical plane. There's that. I've been dealing with that a lot in the last couple of years, and it's just sometimes you just go, who took all these pictures? Who wrote all these things? It's like this just all came out of my head. It was I was live day to day, create day to day.
Right.
And when every once in a while you look back over your shoulder and go, wow, that's a lot of stuff.
Oh, I see stuff I've written before, and I think, did I really write that? I mean, I've seen that a lot of times, and I'm thinking, I don't even think I could write that now. It's like.
I recently had a friend of mine who emailed me and said, oh, I loved your interview in your North Carolina Musicians book with Chris Gargis. Yeah. And, Chris is a really good friend of mine that we lost earlier this year. Yeah. And I honestly had kind of forgotten that I interviewed him for that book. And sure enough, I still not only had it was in the book, I still had his original email to me where he just wrote, including all these kind of Chris asides.
Right.
And I was like, you know what? I want to share this.
Yeah.
So I actually posted it on Facebook and my own blog recently, and I was just like, you know what? Here's Chris.
That's
cool. And
yeah.
I just, again, I'm glad I've created all this, but it shouldn't always all live with me. The more that I share these things, and the more I let these things take a life of their own, it's a good thing.
Well, I'd worked with him before at his studio. So
I was just producing a session. I've done 2 EPs now for my friend Todd Johnson, and we worked at Old House, and it was a project we originally were going to do with Chris.
Right.
So it meant a lot to be back there.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's yeah. I mean, I have photographs from shooting there that I thought was, from recording there that was really cool. That was, and of the his original studio.
Yeah. You don't realize when I've always been someone I like taking pictures. I like writing. I like all these things because it's my way of communication with the world. You don't ever realize how much it might mean. I mean, I know it means something to some people,
right?
But I first and foremost, I'm just aware of what it means to me. But I'll tell you one story that, and it's one of those that was like kind of hit me full force. Was in January, I finally worked up the nerve to reach out to a father or a friend of mine who passed away the year before. The way he'd passed away in early 2021, the way I dealt with his death was I basically created a box set of his own unreleased recordings.
Oh, that's cool.
And because it was like he'd been promising me this box set forever. He never would share anything with me, and I finally found all of his recording through other sources. I basically did what I'd been doing with the Left Bank and the Circle records. I did with his archives, just really for myself and my way of dealing with the loss. I finally worked up the nerve to call his dad. And his dad's like, oh my God, you called the absolute perfect time. I'm sitting down. And I introduced myself. I said, I have all these recordings of your son. He's like, I'd love to hear them. I don't have that. And we're about to finish up. And he goes, oh, by the way, and it was also funny. He goes, you know the Beach Boys. The one thing he'd heard about me from his son was that I knew the Beach Boys.
Right.
Well, I've done photos of the Beach Boys. I think they kind of still recognize me. But it was like, it's always funny what people frame a reference.
Right. Yeah.
So we're talking about that. We're finishing up. He goes, oh, by the way, do you have any pictures of my son? He said, I have 12.
Really?
Yeah. And as I said, Mr. Allen, I photographed your son for 18 years. And I said, I have a lot of these scanned. I have a lot more. And, he says, whenever I will,
That's cool.
And I got off the phone and I lost it.
Yeah, I would.
Everything hit me. And then, so at that point, I went to my wife and I said, I need to get away from being me for a day. So the next day, we got in the car. We came up to Shelby to go to Bridges.
Yeah.
And we're going to hit the antique stores. And the left bank record got accidentally announced by the PR company that morning. And suddenly, my phone is blowing up like Christmas.
Yeah.
And I just said, I will deal with this. But I dealt with that whole thing, literally walking around the Earl Scruggs Center.
That's funny.
All from my phone going, it'll be fine. We've got to take care of this and that. So it's like, I think I looked at my wife and I said, yeah, I can't get away from being me for too long.
Yeah, I don't think you probably can. It's one of those things that, it's.
But I'm glad I created all these things as I get a little older and a little slower, as John Lennon once said. You look back and say, yeah, I've created some good things.
Well, we actually brings us to another thing. 50 years. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, turned 50 last week.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel a day over 49.
Yeah, I understand.
And I spent the day. I did a photo shoot, 7:30 in the morning, and I didn't tell the client. That gets a little, when a person hires you, they understandably they want it to be about them. They don't want to hear, oh, it's my birthday.
Yeah.
I literally was doing a photo shoot when I found out that the Wilco record had got nominated for a Grammy.
Yeah, that's cool.
But you've got to stay on task. You've got to do the job. And so I did a shoot 7:30 in the morning, and then I went and produced a recording session. It actually was a great way to spend the day.
Yeah.
You're living as you've lived the previous 50 years.
Yeah.
Create, have fun.
It's a pretty good life you live. You realize that, right?
Thank you. It has been a journey and an adventure, but I appreciate more that I'm here and have gotten to do some good things.
Would you say you're basically living your dream and have pretty much the whole time?
If you asked the 4-year-old version of myself, I think I would have thought, oh, that's pretty cool. It was different, and because this is me, my dreams changed, because the possibilities changed.
Right. Yeah.
I was 4 or 5 years old. I wanted to be a filmmaker, and I did do that. Yeah. I did become a filmmaker, videographer. I'm still involved in different projects with video, but then writing kept calling.
Yeah.
Then photography called.
Yeah.
And all these other possibilities opened up, and I think I'm glad I've held on to that part of me that was 4 years old, running around with my mom's parents, going, I just want to do everything.
Yeah.
So, I think I'm glad I held on to that dream. I'm glad I didn't give in and become too much of an adult. I am an adult when I'm a producer. I'm the organizer and the adult. I always refer to as the de facto adult in the room, but I still held on to me. I think I'm proud of that.
Did you ever think about, this is, I know because I know your story. You ever think some of these 2:30 in the morning things and driving forever, is this too much? Can I continue to do this? And it's easy when you're young. It's easier when you're in your 20s as, say, your 40s.
Yeah. Thankfully, I've never cared too much about age. My body does remind me a little more occasionally. It's like, you really shouldn't be driving home at 4 a.m. But it's always still been been about, what can I do here? What can I do that I haven't done before, or that I haven't had the chance to do in a while? For me, a good example is working with the Monkees. I first saw that first reunion tour at 86. Did I think I'd ever get the chance to photograph them? No. And then I finally had the chance to work with them and photograph them, sadly without Davy Jones, but with Michael Nesmith. And then I photographed their tours up until their last tour last year. And now I got to interview Mickey Dolenz in person earlier this year. I'll be out. I'll do some dates on the Mickey Dolenz tour next year. And that's because there was a 12-year-old in me who discovered that band and said, this is cool. I really like this. And then it was like, oh, it's like, if you give it enough time, and if you're willing to open the doors will keep slowly opening. But you've got to be willing to go see what's through those doors,
True,
and you've
you
got to
do.
be willing to go through them and keep pushing
True.
through those doors.
I agree totally.
Seeing the things you want to do in life isn't always easy. I would say, these things that we're talking about aren't always for the faint of heart, but they're so worth it.
They're not, and you have to be pretty persistent. I mean, I think that, sometimes I think people talk about consistency, but it's more about persistence. I mean,
That's part of the gig.
Sometimes you have to keep on, even if you think it's coming to a dead end. I want to do this. The doors are shutting for me. But dadgummit, I need to keep on until I find a way to get it to happen. And a lot of people won't do that. They run into a wall, and it's like, this is it.
I've known some great photographers who have an amazing first year, and then they hit that lull, which happens to any of us, in work or, especially freelancing and creativity. And then within 6 months, they're selling insurance. And it's like, no, if you really want to do this, find a way to do it.
Sure.
The circumstances change, and definitely, I've kept myself going for a number of years, just, week to week, month to month, but I still wanted to do it. At one point, my wife said, you couldn't even quit this if you wanted to.
Yeah, I think
claimed a couple times earlier in my life that I wanted to. No, I can't. I don't want to.
And the thing is, once you give in, say, okay, I am going to sell insurance. Since you said that, well, you also, even at that point, once you change your mind and think, oh, I need to go back and do that, it's also reestablishing, rebuilding. Even if you realize you made your mistake and I shouldn't have done that. So I admire that, because that is a determination to do that, and for the love of the art itself. And if I am able to make a living at it, that's even cooler.
Thank you.
And that's what you have done, basically. And then again, it's like anyone who's in the music business, the writing business, the photography business. If you start that with the idea that I'm going to make a lot of money, you probably will not be doing it very long. I mean, you do it for the love, and if the money or success comes through, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it still beats a regular 9 to 5.
Oh, it beats the heck out of that. And I say it sometimes. My life is 24/7 between all my projects and editing and taking care of clients and this and that. But you know what? I don't want to do anything else. This is it wears me out. But the things in life that you care about should wear you out.
It's the labor of love, then I take it.
Yeah.
I've seen tons of your photographs. It's you can't do that and not actually be living it when you're doing it. People make photographs, and some of them occasionally have good ones. You have tons of good ones.
Thank you.
It's just not that your clientele is fairly famous. Okay, really famous.
Some of them are somewhat famous.
But it's the fact that just the photographs are just great.
Thank you. Well, thank you for saying that. For me, photography is a form of communication, and I wanted the photographs to reflect what I was thinking, what I was feeling, what was happening in front of me. And I would say a photograph can be and should be more than just an image. It really should have a three-dimensional quality or more sometimes.
Yeah.
And sometimes, when you take a picture, say when you're photographing Mr. Cash, and then 3 months later he passes away.
Right, yeah.
Those photos take on an extra resonance.
Oh, they do, yeah.
The photos are there, but the perspective changes. But you still got to take the best picture that you possibly can, and then to let the pictures speak for themselves as time goes on. Yeah,
and that's really cool. I mean, you've developed some really cool relationships over the years.
Thank you. I mean, it's amazing now. I actually have photos in, and I'm one of the things I'm proud of myself and got myself a little more organized in the last 2 years was getting my archives together, because like a lot of my music archives are at UNC Chapel Hill.
Right.
A lot of my Charlotte archives will be and already are at UNC Charlotte. Some of my Carter family archives are at University of Tennessee, none of which I attended.
Oh, really?
I'm a tech school kid for a year, and barely that. And I always say that my photos got way better schooling than I ever did, but it's the photographs. Yeah. It's the work that found the homes that hopefully will find more people that like the work.
Well, I've seen it in a lot of different places, and
It's amazing where it ends up sometimes. I'm still finding books. I'll be at Goodwill somewhere, and it's a band that had a book done, and like, oh yeah, that's my picture. Oh, yeah, I heard they published that, and it's amazing what's out there. Even I am still finding.
Do you see pictures sometimes and wonder if you made it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And then sometimes I go immediately like, yes, that's mine because I remember this, that, and or sometimes it's a picture. I go, that looks like mine, and then I'll go back. Oh yeah, okay, that was there that night, and yes, that was it.
My favorite is the Jerry Douglas story. Jerry came home one time, and he goes in. He's watching TV, and he said, "God, that's really good." It was the background music for a commercial. And he's, "That's really good, man. I wish I'd have played that. That was really good." And his wife goes, "The check for that came just like a couple of weeks ago, and you can't even remember that you did that?" And he said, "No, but I thought it was really good, and I wished I had done that." And she said, "Well, you actually did." So, I mean, I guess that happens with them too, you know?
And now doing a lot of events too in Charlotte, I'll see different things like different magazines, different, e-publications.
Right.
Like, oh, that's a good picture. Oh, wait, I took that. Boy, that's a good feeling.
You ever had a picture and think, "Oh, I don't really want anybody to know that I took that picture"? I
try not to admit to such things. I had a friend early on who's this is my memory. Sometimes my memories shift a bit because it's a better story. He said, "Don't publish bad photos. It causes bad habits." And I always liked that phrase, but also I learned working with musicians and being friends with musicians, you never show them a picture that don't ever release a picture that you wouldn't show them yourself.
Right.
As I am sitting across the table from you, and that applies to event photography.
Right.
I'm very particular. It's like, that's not a good picture.
I'm not
releasing
that.
And try not to do that. Every once in a while, and I ran into this with a couple of bands where there was pictures of mine that, say, a third party bought and then used it in a news story that the bands didn't like.
Right.
And of course, it's happened with a lot of photographers. I got to work last year with Neil Leifer, who was the Sports Illustrated photographer.
Yeah.
So much fun hanging out with him.
I'm sure.
We had breakfast together. Yeah. He shot Live Aid in London.
Yeah.
So we're talking music stories. And, he was close friends with Muhammad Ali. And at one point, Sports Illustrated published a story that Ali didn't like, and he blamed Neil for it because they were using Neil's picture. And Neil's like, "I have nothing to do with it." Right. And it took Ali some years before he realized, oh, Neil's not kidding. He thought Neil was bluffing. And I was like, no, sometimes it really is out of our control.
Sure.
Because photo agencies aren't what they used to be. That doesn't happen as much now, and I work more directly with bands, so that doesn't happen. But yeah, it does happen. Or you take a picture of someone at an event, and then something happens where that person's in a national news story the following week, and suddenly the world is calling.
Right.
The observers running your picture all over the world without paying you.
Yeah.
Which didn't happen. An incident about 10 years ago. But that one was like, fine, whatever. There's a point where we say pictures take on a life of their own. I still can live with myself the fact that, that was out of my control.
Sure.
So,
I mean, it's a lot of the more famous pictures in the world, a lot of times the photographer didn't get credit for it, or got credit for it years later.
I mean,
where somebody took the initiative to find out who made that picture when it wasn't captioned, it was just
well, the cover of the first Elvis record, that was taken by a photographer. I think it was a Memphis photographer, and Parker saw it, and Colonel Parker bought it, and then put his name on it.
Oh yeah,
it took years before we knew who actually took the picture.
Sure. I mean, I always try when I do stuff. I ask the people who took this photograph. I want to give the photographer credit, and a lot of times they don't know.
Yeah. I still have friends who'll go, "Did you take blank?" It's like, yeah, I took that.
Yeah, because I like to give credit because I don't think photographers get enough credit. Their pictures turn up, they know they made them, And I had one. I actually did a podcast and an article about with a band, a Western North Carolina band, and they gave me pictures to use. And then a photographer hits me up and said, "Hey man, you're stealing my pictures." I said, it would be good if like you would tell the people that you shot, that you shot it and you would like credit for it, or it's like, and I'm not, man. Send me your information and I'll credit you for it. And he was cool about that, but it was like, well, if you're going to put the stuff out there, and it was a picture of the band that he had sent them when they were at Merlefest, Fireside Collective. I mean, I'll tell you what it is.
And bands don't, a lot of times they're, I need a picture here.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's how it happens.
Oh, yeah.
I think photographers are a little more aware of that now than they used to be. I also will tell you that I've been published so many times in so many places. After a while, it's like, if it has my name, cool. If not, okay.
Your work is still getting exposed.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I'm not really crazy about not. Well, it's like I've had people cover songs that I did not realize that they covered.
Oh wow.
And and probably a lot of times I didn't get royalties from them, but it was like, well, it is out there and someone found it worthy enough to do, and I'm not going to sweat the small stuff because the royalties on that is going to be not that much anyway. So
And sometimes it's just the for me it's been look at that, that's something. That picture I was discussing was of someone in Charlotte. About a year and a half later, I am in Kent, Ohio. I'm doing photos of a 60s package tour. My wife and I are staying at the Hampton Inn, and they deliver a USA Today to our front door, and I pick up the USA, and that one of my pictures is on the front cover.
Really?
I can't remember if it had my name or not. Or if they credited the Observer.
Oh yeah,
it's
probably.
Just okay, you can't make this up. So it's all part of the ride.
Yeah. Also, as a songwriter, I've had songs resurface that I wish had never been recorded. I had never. I had that in the last year. Someone from deep in my past came up with a song that about making bullets out of bat droppings that I had that I wished I'd have never written and forgot that I may have even done it or had it recorded. And it's like, hey, I got a copy. No, you don't. Please don't share that. It's like,
I always, people like, oh, that's you from 2020. It's like, yeah, that's a version of me.
Yeah.
That's where I was that day.
Sure.
And that's like, and some things are a little more serious than others, but.
But I mean, I think you do have to accept it and play it off as well. That was a long time ago, and that's not
a long time ago.
I would not like for that to be an example of my writing.
There's definitely some early articles that I read and go, yeah, I was figuring it out, and I got better at it. But thankfully, I always say it's all part of the line. It's all part of
it. It is.
One of my philosophies is always, if I ever get around to finishing that book I've been working on for a while about stories about being a music photographer, it's called On the Way to Here, which is about the philosophy that everything in your life leads you to the moment that is now.
Right.
And these are all things that happen on the way to now.
Sure. That's the king of that is, do you know Woody Wood?
Oh yeah. Yep.
King of that is Woody.
Yeah, I've known Woody a long time.
You sit and you talk with Woody, and that is basically what it comes out at the end. Yep. It's and that speak of a North Carolina treasure who should be probably a national treasure is Woody.
Yeah.
Woody.
Blue Rags were one of the first bands I worked with.
Really?
Way back in the day.
Blue Rags were a good band.
I
played jobs with the Blue Rags. They were a good band. They're back doing it with, a couple of original members, and which is good.
And they were one of the bands that led me towards working with bands like the Avett Brothers.
Yeah.
And then Scott, in particular, was a big Blue Rags fan.
Yeah.
And they actually had the Blue Rags open for them in Charlotte in 2006. So that was, again, another fun, surreal moment.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, you've seen the total growth of the Avetts from
hanging out in their garage.
Yeah.
And I always say, this is how amazing, how surreal the Avett story is. Imagine you're hanging out with your friends in a garage in Concord, North Carolina. They're recording some songs, and then 18 years later, those songs become a musical.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean,
That's what happened, and that's what happened to me. You know, as I did the pictures for MiniNet, and of course, then the Live Volume 2, and all the studio pictures for Robbinsville, and I literally, you know, I was supposedly the first professional.
Right.
But, you know, I still considered myself, you're a professional photographer. Like, I'm a photographer. It's just me.
Yeah.
But even now. But that growth, and then, you know, obviously they've worked with other people since then, but we're still in touch.
Yeah.
Still talk. I actually ran into Seth about 6 weeks ago. He and I had a long conversation about a lot of things, including these records that we were discussing. And it was just like, I think at the end of it, I said, man, I've just missed talking to you.
Yeah. I mean,
You know, I just miss hanging out with them and talking to them, and just, you know, just good to see friends again sometimes, regardless of whether the rest of the world knows who they are or not. But, you know, does it mean we'll work together again at some point? Maybe. We'll see. You know, if it happens, great. If not, well,
you have the
I'm
contact
still here. And
exactly.
I have 25 years worth of pictures. So go figure.
Yeah. I mean, well, and it's like, you know, as far as Avett fans and people, you know, I've had you and I've had Dolph.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, I mean, like he told me, his mom sent him to hear a band at the Winn-Dixie when he decided that he'd like to not play tennis anymore, you know? And he goes, and the band is the Avett Brothers.
Which is amazing. And the Avetts have been lucky to find a lot of the right people at the right
They have.
time.
I mean, and that is a lot of it.
Yeah.
I mean, as well as plans and good direction goes, a bit of luck is always.
It never hurts.
You know, it doesn't.
Never hurts.
It doesn't.
And one of the people that they introduced me to early on was Doug Williams,
Yeah.
who I ended up working with on another EP earlier this year, a duo called Fall Lift. And a couple singles are now on online. I highly recommend it. And Doug and I have been friends for 20 years. I'm actually going to work with Doug pretty soon on the Left Bank related project, and because he's a 60s geek like I am.
Yeah.
And Steven of Fall Lift said, I really like the sounds of those early Avett records. And I said, well, there's one person responsible for me that can get that to you. And he and I have been talking about working on a project together. So Doug and I both saw the Fall Lift EP, but that grew out of this, us meeting in the Avett's basement, our garage 20 plus years ago.
That is a good sound. I mean, I'm sure there's a ton of people who would like to recreate that on their own. I'm surprised that he's not. Someone don't hammer on his door all the time wanting that. I
think when people, when people see an artist, they figure, well, yeah, and the Avetts are very responsible and very much in control.
Sure.
But it's like, we've look at the Beatles. There's definitely a sonic change from when Norman Smith engineered their records up into Rubber Soul, and then Jeff Emmerich comes on.
Right.
They record Revolver, and then the doors get blown wide open.
True.
So it's like life, that the people around you do affect what you're creating.
Yeah,
and
they do.
so no artist is completely in a bubble, and I'm influenced by the people that I'm working with or talking with or hanging out.
Yeah.
I'll be researching something from the Left Bank from '66, or I did some work on an EP, or it's an EP, a single for a song that had been recorded in Charlotte in 1967. Got that released last year through a German label. And all these things, ideas then show up in other projects, whether it's music or not.
Right, yeah, true.
So, we're all, but that's okay. I mean, we're all satellites. We're all receivers. And you have to let these things in if you're going to create something.
You do. I mean, and I find that in what I do. I draw a lot of influences. Well, I mean, you, for example, I mean, I use the stuff that I know that you do. It affects my life with everything that I do, along with other people that are not doing the same thing that I'm doing, but there's a lot to be learned from that, a whole lot to be learned from that. I am currently trying to put together recorded music from Green Acres Music Hall.
I've heard about this. I'm really excited about this.
One of the huge sources of this died, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I have no idea where. In fact, he was coming. I've known him. I played in band with him.
Yeah.
Paul Setzer, he ran a lot of sound in Charlotte. He ran most all of the sound at Green Acres, recorded the stuff of each show. And Paul was coming to do the podcast like on Tuesday, and they found him, but he had been dead a while. And he had, one of the things he was going to talk about is the music that he recorded there.
Wow.
And I wonder what happened to that. My fear is it was at a swap meet somewhere, or
they cleared out the house. It was
just threw it away.
That has happened so much. And actually, I've known a lot of photographers who didn't have someone taking care of their archives.
Yeah.
Similar things happen, and it's heartbreaking. It's
beyond
heartbreaking.
I mean, it's one of those things that I can't get to the bottom of.
Yeah.
I don't know. He does have a sister, but I have not been able to make contact with her. So,
well, I will tell you that if you need help with anything, you call or email me.
Well, I probably will, because I do know another guy who ran sound up there, and he's a musician around town. And I've talked to him about it, and he has some. And he said one other time, and I think this is where you would be a ton of help. He said one other time they were going to put it together, and they ran into just tons of record company problems.
I can definitely help you with that.
Yeah. Well, he has a good number. He was one of two people who basically ran sound there, who was responsible. And he has some of the very early shows. I think Paul came on a little later and had the bigger, more successful shows. But he has some of the very early Newgrass, very early stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
I will tell you to stay persistent and keep trying.
Okay.
You may not find everything, but that's what keeps you going.
Yeah, well, it's been, I've been on that quest for a while. There are plenty of people who offer their services. I mean, Scruggs Center would definitely like to have Steve.
Yeah.
Metcalf would like to have that, so that is a project that I am working towards.
Now, these projects are ongoing. I think some people say, "Oh, well, you're going to do this for 3 months, 6." No, it's ongoing.
It is ongoing. It is one of those things that doesn't happen instantly. And I'm a fairly patient person, and realize that I'm more patient at an older age than I was as a younger person. But I've established a relationship, even though I knew the guy. I've established a relationship with him now that. And so hopefully that'll. I just want him to let me listen to what he has, and listen to the quality of it and see where it's at.
Yeah,
and I think I can work that out. It's just actually at this point, and that's another thing. Like with you, is finding the space to fill it in there.
Yes,
the time. I mean, that is really hard, because sometimes when you have time, other people do not.
Yes. I'm really glad when we were working on this Left Bank record, I'm really glad I'm a night owl, because they were all on West Coast, and they like to email me about 12:30 and say, okay, we need blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And I figured out early on I need to have a prayer book, what I called a prayer book. Basically a link that has everything finished, done. So whenever they emailed at any given time of night, and thankfully I was still up and usually working at that point. It's like, oh, okay, here it is, done.
Right. Yeah. I'm kind of the same way with. I usually have a number of podcasts ahead, which is, and a lot of times I hold them for different reasons. If it can aid someone, at a certain point, then I'll put it. I'll use it there. Some of them turn out to be not that wonderful. They, in theory, it seemed like a good interview that turned out not to be really that good.
Interviews can be interesting. I've done some interviews, like doing phone interviews, and you go, oh, that was okay. And then you read it back, and you go, that was really good. That was just, and sometimes the reverse happens, but it's when you were able to step back from the conversation and say, oh, okay, I actually got some good things out of it.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah. One of my favorite ones I have done of recent was David Holt.
Oh, yeah.
David, it's probably the last interview David has done. I don't know. in all probability he'll do another one, but you can tell he realizes that is the last interview, you know, and there's some really good stuff in there, and there's some really good stuff that he asked me to take out.
Wow.
And that is one of those things that, of course, I'll do it for the person, you know.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I do not want to put out anything anyone does not want and put them in a bad light. But some of the stuff that I cut was just fabulous.
I had to do that.
You know,
You go, okay, this is better all around. I'm glad I get this out there. At least you know the story.
Right. Yeah, true.
Sooner or later in time, other people get to know the story when it's ready.
Right.
But yeah, and also some people are not really willing to let everything go.
True.
You know, some people. Some people. I think I'm large. I always like to think I'm an open book. I'll tell you everything, and you know, I try not to tell you that much off the record. But some people want to, because of the personality or just trying to be protective, they
Sure.
let it out in pieces. And then you actually sometimes, and I've done this with musicians and friends, where I actually stepped back and looked at my conversations or interviews with them over the years and said, oh, this fits with that.
Right.
You know,
Oh, yeah.
it's a puzzle that sometimes takes time to put together. And going back to the Left Bank record, you know, I was interviewing some of the band members while the 2001, 2002 sessions were happening.
Right.
It was about the time I got in touch with them. They had told me stories that for 20 years didn't line up.
Ah.
And then the night I found those other recordings, all the stories
It
lined
all
up.
came together.
It took 20 years
Yeah.
for all these pieces that I had heard from 3 to 4 people. I mean, it should all happen at once, you know, things like
Right,
that.
right.
You know, it all lined up in one night, but it took 20 years.
Sure. I mean, yeah, I've had that happen, and that I'd left an interview scratching my head, and then come to find out over time, well, you know what? It matches up.
Yeah, it does. But again, that's time and perspective. But thankfully, you're here to experience that.
True, and a lot of times, the podcast takes a life of its own. The people tell this story, and sometimes it fills in for me, where actually it may not fill in for other people. That is one of the things that, at some point, I wonder about. And a lot of times people will ask me, and yeah, I'll tell them, you know, well, this is actually how that came to be. That it seems strange to be there, but it did. And sometimes I think I need to go back and do a whole podcast of the things, you know, this thing that you thought was not true at the time, but then turned out to be the truth. You know?
Yeah.
So,
Time and perspective. Amazing thing.
what else you got going on?
Oh, gosh. So, you know, we did the Avett Brothers exhibition here earlier this year. We're looking on.
That was really good.
Thank you.
That was one of my favorites. It was real good.
Thank you. And there's a lot more that I hope people get to see someday. We definitely want to take that show on the road. We
I was going to ask you about
yes.
that. Yeah.
We're talking to a couple places now. One place that I would love to have it to say, well, we'll do it, but the Avett Brothers have to come play.
Yeah.
I was like,
That's a caveat that I don't know that I can make happen.
I would love that, but I don't know if even I can make that happen.
Right.
But nor should I. So
True.
But we'll see. I think there's a home for that show, and I definitely think it hopefully will span the Carolinas and further.
Yeah, that would be.
There's a really good story there of a group of musicians who created something amazing that a lot of people follow. And by the way, there's a guy who witnessed it photographed it for all those years.
Yeah.
So there's that. There's I'm definitely gonna produce another record or two in the next couple months. I'm really gonna try to get back to being more of a I feel like I don't say I've neglected being a music photographer. I've just had to do it while I've been busy with other things.
Sure.
You know, I was telling you earlier that in February when everybody said, okay, we can do events again, it has not stopped. Well, that's wonderful, and it's definitely been, in terms of work, it's been my best year of my life, which is great. But every once in a while, I go, I wish I could just go off and be a music photographer
Yeah,
again.
I know.
So I'm going to try to do that a little more in the next year. That's a little easier said than done when, literally a good bit of next year's already booked for me.
Yeah.
Great problem to have.
Yeah, it is.
But,
It is.
but
I was going there.
you
Yeah,
know,
it's a great problem.
It's adult problems wasn't quite sure I'd ever going to have to deal with. But I'm going to try to get out and shoot a few more bands, work with a few more bands. A few more bands I've worked with are touring again. So
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. I was telling somebody recently, it's like, if I was a rational person, I could say, I'll just, work every day in Charlotte, I make all this money, but I'm not rational.
Yeah. Well,
Life is not rational. Creativity is not rational.
No, it's not.
It's heart and emotion and you as the individual saying, I want to do this. And I will keep working. I'm sure I will not be, bored anytime soon, but I'm really going to try to be a little more of it. Just me on the road again with a camera, and we'll see what happens.
Workaholic.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong. Nothing wrong with that.
No,
though.
there's not.
There's not.
No,
I mean,
I have thankfully. I always say this about creativity: the well is hopefully is endless, and thankfully for me, it still is endless. But you also have to allow it to be endless. You have to say, I still want to do this. I still want to create something. I still want to make a record that's better than the one I've made before. I still want to take a photograph that's better than the one I've taken before. It's wonderful that people say, "Oh my gosh, you've worked with Johnny Cash, and that's good." But ultimately it only is better if that feeds into the next shoot I do. If it makes me take better photos.
Sure, it's not the end all be all.
Yeah, it's nice that it's wonderful that I've worked with all these amazing people.
Right.
But I still got to go off and take a good picture.
Sure, you do.
And I want to.
I mean, it's with writing for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've written a lot of really good stuff, but does that mean that I don't want to write even better stuff? I'm always,
It keeps you going.
It is, and
keeps you living.
Sometimes I think the well is deep, or I look at mine as a spring more than a well, because it's constantly there. It's an undercurrent almost in my life, and and my problem isn't the longevity of the water source, because I think mine's fairly infinite. For me, it is. Can I harness that though? Which a lot of times
can I not definitely use this as more of a stronger force for good?
Right.
The way I describe, like, for me, photography is something I literally can do every day of my life.
Right.
And thankfully it comes out. Every shoot's a little different. Some is a little more work than others, and some are easier. Writing for me, I don't write all the time, but then when I do, it just comes out. The way I describe writing for me, and this is how I've written all of my now 8 books, is that every once in a while you take the cup, you turn it sideways, a little bit of water comes out, and then one day you turn it sideways and Niagara Falls comes out.
Yeah.
And those days when it happens, I am all down the rabbit hole, and that's all I will do for days and weeks. Photography is just, thankfully, it's a part of my being. It's what I do. Writing is that thing that gets hold of me and says, you're doing this and you're doing this now until you're done.
Well, I think writing doesn't give you a choice about that.
No, it doesn't.
Because it is one of those things that it is in the moment. I think it's in the moment that gives it to you. It's like, here it is. I'm giving it to you, this lump of it right now. Yeah. And you better use it. You better harness it, because it's the old adage of the song that you write, say at 4 o'clock in the morning, that you don't put down. And when you wake up in the morning, none of it fits back together right like it did at 4 in the morning.
Yeah.
And writing's that way too. I mean, it is just.
We were discussing the Double Door earlier, and there's I was writing the third and final version of that book, and I was like half asleep on my couch, 2 or 3 in the morning, and this line appeared in my head. It's like, the double door went through us as much as we went through it. It's
Yeah,
like,
that's cool. That's
it.
a great
That's the
line.
book. Like,
Yeah,
get
yeah,
your,
yeah.
off the bed and go to your computer and write that down. And then, because I realized what paragraph I wanted it in, that I finished the paragraph that surrounded it.
Sure.
Because it literally was like, here it is. It's out of your head now. The Circle album has liner notes credited to Sir George Harold King Jr., which is a nod to my grandfather. That was mostly his real name. And my layout person said, I really need some Derek Taylor-esque liner notes.
Right.
So, oh yeah, I can do that. Well, few days later, I'm driving home from a gig. Those liner notes showed up in my head.
Yeah, it's
and I was like, I can't get home fast enough.
You can't.
You cannot get out.
You can't.
But it was like, run home, write it, tidy it up. And it's like, it's still the best freaking feeling in the world.
Yeah.
Like, that's it.
But
That's
people
it.
people do not understand that. I'll also get it, and I'll be weird about it because there'll be something else going on in my life, and I have basically got it all blocked out, and I don't even hear what people are saying, and I'll go because I'm afraid to move away from it to hear what someone's saying. It's like, you don't understand, but I got to write this. I got to write something down now because if I don't, it will.
Disappears
I've had
into the ether.
It does because I've had that in my life so many times. You don't get it down then,
It's not quite the same later.
It
has
is
to
not
come out of your head.
And sometimes you're on a roll with writing something that you just can't take that break because it stops that whole flow.
Yeah.
I
was working on the North Carolina Musicians book concurrently with the book on the North Carolina 60s scene, and I realized that I couldn't work on both at the same time. I had to do one, then the other, and I could never find the voice. Really, the North Carolina 60s book really is the story of the kids who were looking back on their time growing up in that period. I wanted my voice to be minimal, but I knew I had to tie these things together. And I went home to visit my wife's family. I got up one morning, and I really just thought, I'll jot down some ideas. And I didn't stop writing for 2 days straight. Because all of a sudden, the book arrived.
Sure.
And thank God, I married into a family where my wife's mom was a writer.
Oh, yeah,
my
that's
wife's
a
a
good
writer,
thing.
too.
Yes.
It's just like, this is...
we understand it.
We know what's happening. So I literally wrote nonstop for 2 days.
Yeah.
And a week later, the first draft of the book was done.
Yeah, that's generally the way it is, and I think with most writers that I know writers who write X number of lines every day.
Yeah.
And make it a craft, and it is. I mean, there is a craft to it, and
there is,
and you do, whether it's songwriting, any type of writing, you do need to learn the craft of it and know the craft of it. But if you rely on the craft of it, then probably you're not a real writer, because if it doesn't storm you at some point, then
it'll fight you. It will fight you sometimes.
Yeah, it will, and then sometimes it can elude you for a long.
Like that's not quite there.
No, it can be as fickle as it can be generous.
Yeah. But that's part of the joy of discovery and the journey of it all.
It is really.
It's like oh, there might be something out there I haven't done yet that's better than I've done before. Sure. Okay, let's go find it.
Oh yeah, I'm that way a lot, and wind up with projects that I didn't really mean to have, but they just kind of happened.
Yeah,
the podcast was actually that way. Well,
I always say photography. I didn't choose photography. Photography chose me.
Yeah,
it said, you're doing this.
Writing had chose me early on in my life because, like when I was 14, I had a piece published in the New Yorker.
Oh wow!
So, and I didn't even think twice about it. I won. When you're in school, you have a little writer contest, and I'd win this, and I just never thought too much about it. But it always encouraged my teachers to encourage me to write.
Yeah.
You need to stay with this. I can help you do this, and it became a life that I didn't really. I don't know that it chose me.
Yeah.
I didn't have.
Those things usually do.
Yeah. I mean, music chose me, but I don't think I had any choice about that. I think that was just in my whole family line, and I don't.
I've learned in life that it's easy to fight a lot of these things that show up in your life and say you should do this, you should try this, because it's scary. I mean, the unknown is scary.
It is scary.
It it leads you down paths you didn't expect to go. But the worst thing in life is to have these things open and say, no, I'm not ready for this. I'm not prepared for this. I'm not, and then the road fades away.
It does.
My life could have gone a lot of different ways at different times, but I'm really thankful that I listened to those odd voices saying, hey, what about this?
Yeah. Can I do this? Mm-hmm. Well, I know I can. Do I want to take the time to do it? Then that also becomes a thing too.
Yes.
I know I can do this. I even want to do it. Where does it fit in my life at the moment?
I generally, if I believe in it, I always will make time for it. But yeah, it's easier said than done with everything happening in our world these days.
Yeah.
But I always say, if you have that chance, go do it.
Let's go back to to your projects. Where are they available?
Oh, okay. The Left Bank album is available worldwide. You can go to omnivorerecordings.com. The Circle album is available through thecircle.com or the Circle's official Facebook page. I actually set up an Etsy page so
cool.
they could sell the CDs.
Sure.
And if you buy CDs through Etsy, you're actually get the CD from me at this point. Cool. So. And we're talking to some labels, so definitely stay tuned for other things. But yeah, definitely buy this record now. And I, it's always nice to say, you oversaw the first studio album by this band in 55 years.
Yeah,
and I did, and I think it sits alongside the records they made in the 60s. And I'm proud of all my projects for different times. I'm proud that I saw these records through. And then the Fall Lift EP is out now, or the full EP will be out digitally soon, and then look for 2 EPs and eventually a 3rd EP by Todd Johnson and the Revolvers, with the first coming out. I think first single comes out in January.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. And then please, stay in touch with me at danielcoston.com, Daniel Coston on Facebook, Daniel Coston Photos on Instagram. I'm definitely working on. I still need to sit down and write a piece about my time with Wilco, which people have been asking me to do. I just have not had the time to do it.
Right.
But it is coming. I'm really going to try in the next few weeks to sit down and write some more stories as I hopefully get back and finish this book I was mentioning to you. Just kind of like go back and write some things and talk about, again, the road to here. Yeah,
I mean, and that's what pretty much you've described today in a nutshell,
Yeah. It's again, I don't try to make big signposts of birthdays or turning 50, and it's not. But I will say, after I described this year as a blur. This year has been an amazing, remarkable blur. But at looking back on this year and the last 50 years, it's nice to know that I created something good and am still hopefully creating something good, and that's what it's all about.
A high-end producer too. I mean, you have a lot of projects, but you actually produce it, not just there's ideas are great. Mm-hmm. To fruition is hard.
Yeah, and the projects kind of dictate sometimes my role. Sometimes I'm the one putting up the money and then seeing it through to release. Sure. Sometimes I'm the one like, okay, that's a great idea. Let's do this. Let's do that.
Right.
The projects, the ideas sometimes tell you as much as I tell it. But you have to be open to that.
True.
And just like all the different photo shoots, the opportunities arise and say, okay. Yeah, I want to do that. So I think there's some good things coming the next year.
That's great, man. I look forward to it. Thank you for taking the time.
Oh, this has been good to catch up with you again.
Yeah, always a pleasure for me.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, sir.